get all the technology figured out. We're learning a new system there. So our other one cratered on us. But it is good to be in the house of the Lord this morning. We're going to be in the beginning in the 13th chapter of the book of Judges this morning. Anybody remember who we studied about last week? Yeah. We studied about Deborah, and now we studied about Gideon, and those were two. As I was reading through Samson, Deborah and Gideon were two very different personalities. You remember how when the Lord came to Gideon and said, "Oh, thou mighty man of valor," and he's like, Who are we talking about, right? And you see that in his personality, and we're going to compare that. I want you to kind of keep that idea of Gideon in your mind as we study the life of Samson, because what Gideon lacked in what we would kind of call ego today, we're going to find Samson had it in abundance. And God was still able to use both of them, but in very different ways. Gideon, he ended up in triumph. He ended up in a great deal. God was really able to use him, and I think it had something to do with his this kind of meekness. He really saw himself as a very failed and flawed person, I think. Whereas Samson's going to be exactly the opposite. He's going to be exactly the opposite. So we're going to begin reading in the 13th chapter of the book of Judges, beginning in verse 1. And this starts out very similar to a lot of the passages that we've read throughout the book of Judges. It's almost the exact same words. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord. That's kind of a pitiful commentary on the nation of Israel, isn't it? We read this over and over again. Again and again, they failed. Again and again, they began to follow after the idols that were in the land. Again and again, they began to intermarry. Again and again, they began to do all the things that God had clearly and unequivocally instructed them not to do. Again and again. And so this is the way it begins. And guess what also happens again? And the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. And so this is what happens. When again we just the nation just continues to stray away, and again, God has to use captivity. He has to use punishment. He has to use these things to once again try to draw their attention back to Him. I hope that we're learning the lesson. I hope that we're understanding that a nation that strays from God uses, He won't tolerate that forever. He comes to a place where He says, okay, guys, you've strayed so far, I've got to try to get your attention. So what am I going to use to get your attention? I'm going to take you into a place of hardship, a place of captivity, a place where you don't have all the things that I desire for you to have as my children. I have to take you back to that place so that maybe you'll get refocused and maybe you'll get your mind back on things. So for 40 years, they're under captivity. And there was a certain man of Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and bare not. Here's another theme that we find, don't we? God uses barren women. It's amazing how many times I was thinking about this as I was studying the lesson, how many times that we see God use these older women that had not been able to bear children. And that was bearing children was such a big deal in that day. You were actually kind of looked at as half a person or something if you weren't able to ever bear children. You know, it was kind of a curse. It was kind of, and this is the way society looked at it. But again and again, we see God use these women that were now advanced in age, not having been able to bear children, and He uses them. It's amazing that the patterns that we see in the Bible as God relates these stories to us, these accounts. There's these themes, and this is one of the themes. Verse 3, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto the woman, and said unto her, Behold, now thou art barren, and bearest not. But thou shalt conceive and bear a son. You know, again, the same way. He sends a messenger. He sends someone, and it's interesting to me, too, that where does he go to talk to? He goes to talk to the women. Wonder why? Wonder why? Could it be that maybe women are more soft to the voice of God at times? That's right. That's true too. But he talks to these women, and I think maybe part of the reason may be too that these women had been praying for this to happen. You know, let me have a child. Let me remove the reproach. Let me, you know, and God hears those prayers. We know that was the case with Hannah, out of which came Samuel, one of the greatest prophets and priests in Scripture. You know, we have a very detailed account of her anguishing before the Lord. He said, thou art barren and bearest not, but thou shalt conceive and shalt bear a son. Now therefore beware, I pray thee, and drink not wine nor strong drink, and eat not any unclean thing. He begins to give her instructions. Very clear, very detailed, very precise instructions. For lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Wow, what a problem. Not only are you going to bear a son, I mean, think about it in our terminology today. You're not only just going to bear a son, this son is going to grow up to be president. Think about it in that context, where you very clearly, God tells you, your son's going to be the leader. He's going to be the deliverer. He's going to do these great things for the nation. Verse 6. Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, A man of God came unto me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God. It was very terrible. But I asked him not whence he was, neither told me his name. She said it was a little frightening. It was a little, it was a little overwhelming. When she uses the word terrible, it doesn't mean terrible awful. It means terrible awesome. This is an awe-inspiring event. It was powerful. Powerful. When God talks to us, we feel it. It's a power. We sometimes have powerful encounters with God. He said, but he didn't tell me who he was. Verse 7, but he said unto me, Behold, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and thou drink no wine nor strong drink, neither eat of any unclean thing. For the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. So she relates to Manoah, the husband, what this angel had told her. Verse 8, then Manoah entreated the Lord and said, O my Lord, let the man of God which thou didst send come again unto us, and teach us what we shall do unto the child that shall be born. He says, teach us. That's a good thing for parents, right? Isn't it? Teach me what to do with this child. You know what? Because I figured out this one thing. Every kid is different. Every kid is different. They respond to different things in different ways. They require different things. We were laughing at Isla We were talking about Isla this morning because she's very particular about, she doesn't like dirty fingers. If her fingers get dirty, she must have a wipe. The fingers must be, yeah, they're all different. They all have different personalities. They all have different talents. They all have different abilities. They react to things differently. And so it's a very good thing when parents begin to pray, teach me what to do with this child. Because sometimes as parents we say, oh Lord, what do I do with this child? But if we pray for that, God will tell us. He will give us instructions. And God hearkened to the voice of Manoah. And the angel of God came again unto the woman, and she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. Again, that they made Manoah arose and went after his wife, the king's man, and said unto him, art thou the man that speaketh unto the woman? And he said, I am. Manoah said, let God how shall we order the child, and how shall we do unto him? I think this phraseology is kind of interesting. Just don't leave it, ain't it? I think this is important that we look at the words, because he says something interesting. He said, how shall we order the child? What he's talking about is, how should we order his life? How should we set him up? How should we go about raising this child so that what happens is agreeable, is what God really designed? Again, that's a very good prayer for parents to pray. How do we order the child? You know, we see so many parents taking their, particularly in the spiritual sense, they take their spiritual instruction, you know, the spiritual upbringing of the child very lightly these days. Yeah, yeah. You know, the Nazarites, and we're going to get into some of that. There were certain things. There were certain rules raising as a Nazarite. You know, you didn't cut your hair. You didn't drink wine or strong drink. You didn't touch dead things. There were certain things that you had to do to maintain that Nazarite vow. It was a vow of obedience, and it was a very strict vow. But he says, how do we order things? You know, as parents, we need to think about that. As grandparents, we need to think about it. How do we order the development of our child? What are the things that we need to be investing in? You know, what I see people investing a lot in today are sports, entertainment, things like this, clothing, fashion, design. You know, you got to have the right look, got to have the right clothes. You don't want to stand out. You got to have the right sneakers. You know, Crocs are in, and then Crocs are out. You got to have a Uggs. And, yeah, we do all these things, right? We take a lot of time and attention to that. But for so many parents, they don't take that same care with the spiritual development of the child. They don't show them that it's good to be in the house of the Lord. They don't train them to have that built into them where if you're not in church on Sunday morning, it feels really weird. It feels really unusual not to be in the house of the Lord when we're meeting together. They really train them about tithing and about giving. From the time that they earn that first dollar, they make sure that they instruct those kids in those things. These are spiritual development things. This is the way we order the life of our child. We read the Bible with them and before them. We let them see us praying, and we teach them how to pray. These are all spiritual development things. This is what I think is, Manasseh is really asking this. Manoah is really asking this. He's saying, how do we order things? How do we get everything in the right place, in the right order? Verse 13, the angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, Of all that I've said unto the woman, let her be aware. She may not eat of anything that cometh of the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. All that I've commanded, let her observe. So again, he just says, I've already told her. I've already told your wife. And it's interesting that she's never named in Scripture. We don't know what her name was. She's always just referred to as the woman or as Manoah's wife or what. We never know her name. And as we read on, we see, and we're not going to read all of it because we don't have time this morning. As we read on, we see how, Manoah really tried to get them to stay for a meal, and he said, no, if you're gonna kill something, sacrifice it unto the Lord. And if we skip down to verse 20, it says, for it came to pass when the flame went up toward heaven off the altar of the sacrifice, that the angel of the Lord ascended into the flame of the altar. And Manoah and his wife looked on it and fell on their faces to the ground. But the angel of the Lord did no more appear to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was an angel of the Lord. And Manoah said unto his wife, we shall surely die, for we have seen God. Making the sacrifice, and the guy's there, and then boom, he's in the middle of the fire and he's gone. This is what it took to reinforce to Manoah, hey, this really was God. This is God speaking to us. This is important. Verse 24, the woman bare a son and called his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move him at times in the camp of Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. So we see him grow up. Again, fulfilling that Nazirite vow. Mom and Dad were doing what they were supposed to do. Mom had not partaken of any, wine or strong drink. She had not done these things. She had fulfilled those things. And we see Samson, God began to use Samson at a very early age to begin to do things. And then trouble happens. Trouble begins to occur. And this is the contrast, I think, that we get between Gideon and Samson. Because Samson, there's no doubt God was with him. He was able to begin to do great things. But Samson's ego began to get inflated. We can see it in his actions. And Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. First mistake, right? Yeah. There is a reason. There is a absolute reason, many reasons, why God always instructed Israel to stay in your tribes. When it comes time for romance and marriage and family and all, stay in your tribe. We need to teach our kids this. I'm always amazed when you talk to people and they're talking about, you'll hear somebody start talking about how all their romantic difficulties. They just can't find that right he or she, They just can't, it's just one dud after another after another. And I always ask them, where have you been looking? Where have you been looking? And the problem most of the time is they've been looking for, as the old song says, they've been looking for love in all the wrong places. Yeah. And I always tell them, the very best place you can find a potential mate is in God's house. Why? Because God told us to stay in our tribes. And for us today, our tribe is the fellowship of Christ. That's where you go to find. Stay in your tribe. But he began to look around and he saw this. I'm sure she was beautiful and she was of a different tribe. She was of the tribe of the oppressors. She was a Philistine. He shouldn't have even been looking that direction. Yeah. He shouldn't have even been looking that direction, but here he was, and he saw her. Yes. Do you think the devil didn't bring her right in front of him? Yeah. I have to believe the devil, and the devil will do that. He will put things right in our path that are designed to cause us to lust after them if we're not, I always think about what David said. David said, what? I have made a covenant with mine eyes. We need to do that because the devil will parade things in front of us that are designed to entice us, to draw us apart, to pull us into a different direction. Yeah. Yeah, we got to be careful. We got to be careful. Stay in our tribes. Watch where we look. Watch watch what we put our attention on to. Because these things will suck us up. Verse 2. And he came up and he told his father and his mother and said, I've seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her to me for wife. Verse 3, and then his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, or among all my people, that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said unto his father, Get her for me, for she pleaseth me well. Okay. Mom and Dad should have put their foot down right here, right? No, son, I am not going to help you. Matter of fact, I'm going to do everything to stand in your way. And sometimes as parents, we have to do that. We see the disaster coming. We see the freight train coming down the track. We have to stand in the way. But his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord, that he sought an occasion against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So God's still going to use it. He's still using Samson. Then went Samson down and his father and his mother to Timnath. And it came to the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he rent him as he would rent a kid, and he had nothing in his hands, but he told not his father or his mother what he had done. So again, you get a sign of his strength. God's beginning to use him. He's beginning to prove what incredible strength he has. I mean, to think about it, he takes on a lion with his bare hands and literally rips them to pieces. Think about that. If you've ever seen a lion, and you know what killers they can be, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? And he went down and he talked to the woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. And he took thereof in his hands and went on eating. He came to his father and his mother and gave them, and they did eat. But he told them not that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. Now, what's the problem with that? He touched something dead. This was an explicit violation of his vows. The Nazarite vow, and the angel was very clear. Part of the vow was, you don't touch anything that's dead. Yet he goes sauntering over to the lion. He sees that the bees have built a honeycomb in the bones and the carcass of the lion. And he begins to take and eat of their honey, takes it, gives it to mom and dad. So again, you're seeing the slide, aren't we? coming one step at a time. So his father went down unto the woman, and Samson made there a feast, for so used the young men to do. The commentator writes out there's also a problem probably with the feast, because of the way that the Philistines would feast. These were drunken banquets. He participated in. Again, you just see the progression. You see the steps. And isn't this the way it always is? Most of the time, people don't just fall into the big pit overnight, do they? Most of the time, it's a little slippage here, a little slippage there, a little lack of care here, a little lack of concern there, a little less attention over here where it needs to be focused. He sees those things doing, and slowly but surely, here we go. Pretty soon we find we're in the bottom of the pit. That's a tendency to disobedience. That's a good way. Okay. We call it sin nature, don't we, brother? A tendency to disobedience. That's our natural, fleshly sin nature. I heard somebody mentioning somebody they felt they maybe were bipolar this morning. And I always think about what one of the counselors down at the mission, she said, we're all bipolar. She said we have a sin pole and we have a God pole. And you got to decide which one's going to have preeminence. But this is what happens. We begin to slip. Our natural tendency is to fulfill the lust of the flesh, isn't it? And it came to pass, verse 11, when they saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Samson said unto them, I will now put forth a riddle unto you. If you can certainly declare it within the 7 days of the feast, find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 change of garments. But if you cannot declare it to me, then shall you give me 30 sheets and 30 changes of garment. And they said unto him, put forth thy riddle, that we may hear it. And he said unto him, out of the eater came forth meat, now the strong came forth sweetness. And they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they said unto Samson's wife, entice thy husband, that he may declare unto us the riddle. Lest we burn thee in thy father's house with fire, have ye called us to take that we have? Is it not so? So, again, you look at Samson's wife and you say, well, why would she do that? Why would she do that? What was she? She was a Philistine. See, Samson should have realized she has no allegiance to my God, and she has no allegiance to me. She's out for herself. She's looking out for herself. And when they threatened to burn her and her father, then she's going to yield to it. And Samson's wife wept before him and said, thou dost but hate me and lovest me not. Thou hast put a riddle unto the children of my people, and hast not told it me. And he said unto her, behold, I have not told it to my mother or my father, and shall I tell it unto you? And she wept before him. You can get the melodrama here, can't you? She's just throwing herself out. Oh, Samson, you don't love me. If you love me, you would tell me. You can trust. All this kind of stuff. We can just see it all, can't we? We can play it out in our minds. And she wept before him the 7 days while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the 7th day that he finally gave in. Right? And he told her. Because she lay sore upon him. And she told the riddle to the children of the people. And the men of the city said unto him on the 7th day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? And he said unto them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. They showed their true colors. They were Philistines. They did what was best for them, and that's the way the world will always do. The world will always do what's best for the world. I get very disturbed. I keep reading about things, how so many young men and now young women are getting addicted to online gambling. Literally getting addicted to it. It begins to take over their life. They're losing all their money. These college kids are going, and they're not going to class. They're going, they're constantly online betting. Why is the world promoting betting? Because it's good for the world. Those guys that own all of the sports betting online apps, they're making big money. They don't care that somebody's addicted to gambling any more than the drug addictor, the drug dealer cares if somebody's addicted to his drugs. Matter of fact, they want them to be addicted because they get more money that way. You think the pharmaceutical companies care that everybody has to have psych drugs of some kind? We got to have drugs to go to sleep at night. We got to have drugs to wake us up. We got to have drugs to get us through the day. All at the hands of legal pharmaceuticals. Do you think they care? No. All they want is our money. Because that's the way the world acts. Samson shouldn't have been amazed by the actions of his wife. She was a Philistine. She was acting just like a Philistine would act. Just like we shouldn't be surprised by the actions of the world, because the world acts just like the world acts. Right? Verse 19. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon, and he slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave changes of the garments unto them, which expounded the riddle. And his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he used as his friend. So the whole thing, it was ill-fated from the start. It certainly ended in a bad place. Wife gone, 30 men killed. All these things happen. Why? Because Samson was in a place where he didn't belong in the first place. Chapter 15. And it came to pass within a while after, in the time of wheat harvest, that Samson visited his wife with a kid. And he said, I will go into my wife into the chamber, but her father would not suffer him to go in. And her father said, I have verily thought that thou hadst utterly hated us. Therefore I gave her to thy companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray thee, instead of her. And Samson said concerning them, Now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. Keeps getting worse, doesn't it? Samson went and caught 300 foxes. I don't know what it would take to catch 300 foxes. I gotta believe that's a pretty big feat. And he took firebrands and turned tail to tail and put a firebrand in the midst between two tails. And when he had set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines and burn up both the shocks and also the standing cord and the vineyards and the olives. Burn their stuff up, burn their crops up. Then the Philistines said, Who hath done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Again, the world always extracts its revenge. Be sure, the world is always going to extract its revenge. You may think, we see this most evident, I think, in famous people. Movie stars and athletes and all this, and they get all caught up on it. But so much of the time, the world extracts its revenge on it. The devil always takes his wages, doesn't he? And Samson said unto them, Though they have done this, yet will I be avenged of you, and after that will I cease. And he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and went down and dwelt on the top of the rock Etam. And the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah, spread themselves in Lehi. And the men of Judah said, Why are you come up against us? And they answered, To bind Samson are we come up, to do to him as he has done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went to the top of the rock Etam and said to Samson, Knowest thou not that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is that thou hast done unto us? And he said unto them, As they did unto me, so I have done unto them. 3,000 men of where? Judah. And what did they say? They said, Do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? Hey, what does that tell us about the state of Judah, of Israel at this time? They had totally given in. They had totally given up. They said, Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? How dare you do this thing that could bring problems on us? Do you not know that we're a captive nation? It says a lot about how weak, how ineffective, how ineffectual the children of Israel had become during this 40 years. They had totally been beat down. They had allowed themselves to be beat down. We've got to be careful here. We cannot allow the world to beat us down. We have to remember who we are, who we belong to, what we're about, and let the world come at us if they want to, but we're not going to bow a knee to the world. These guys were willing to bow a knee to the world. They were willing to bow their knee to the Philistines, even though God had told them repeatedly throughout their history, and they had seen great victories and all, but they had totally forgotten all that. They just said, "Oh, we're just a poor little, slave nation. We can't upset the powers that be. We gotta go along and get along." Yes. Yes. And they've reached it by this utter state of captivity, oppression. Oh, we're getting fear. Oh, we're going to get in trouble. We're standing up to our captors. And they said unto him, We are come down to bind thee. These are the children of Judah. These are not Philistines. Yeah, you got to keep this right. You read this, you think, well, the Philistines came down to get them. No. His own people came to get him. We are come down to bind thee, that we may deliver thee into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson said unto them, Swear unto me that ye will not fall upon me yourselves. And spake unto him, saying, No, but we will bind thee fast and deliver thee into their hand, but surely we will not kill thee. And they bound him with 2 new cords and brought him up from the rock. His own people sold him out. His own people. You know where we're seeing a lot of selling out of God right now? Right there behind the pulpits of America. We see too many pastors, too many preachers, too many evangelists that have bent their knee to the world, and they have sold out God in the promise of having a big mega church or having prestige in the community or acceptance in the community or whatever. They have sold out God. They're no better than these 3,000 men of Judah who came up to bind up Samson. Yes. Yeah, but we got too many people following that preacher. We see it it's just rampant. Verse 14, and when they came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands loosed from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and he put forth his hand and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. And Samson said, with the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of an ass, I have slain 1,000 men. And it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and called that place Ramoth Lehi. You also get a little idea here, don't you, about where Samson's at. God's still using him. But did you notice what he said? He said, with the jawbone of an ass, what? I have slain 1,000 men. No. He didn't say, oh, what a mighty victory God hath wrought today in Judah by using me to slay these 1,000 men with nothing more than God. He didn't say that, did he? He said, no, look at me. Look at Samson. They tried to tie me up. Broke them right off. They tried to come after me. I found the only thing I found just an old bone, a jawbone of a donkey, and I grabbed it up, and with that, I slew 1,000. You see what a pitiful place spiritually Samson. God still used him, but he's in a pitiful place. And he was sore athirst, and called on the Lord, and said, Thou hast given this great deliverance unto the hand of thy servant, and now shall I die for thirst. Fall into the hand of the uncertain God. Again, you just see, it's all about him. Oh God, I'm going to die. It's so thirsty. I can't go on. Yeah, where's that? But God clave a hollow place that was in the jaw, and there came water out. And when he had drunk, the Spirit came again, and he revived. Wherefore he called the name, therefore, Enhakkore, which is in Lehi unto this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. God still used him. God still used him. Why? I couldn't tell you. That's up to God. But God was still able to use him for 20 more years. And then we see trouble start again, don't we? Verse 16. Chapter 16. Oh, we're not going to do it. I thought I had about 10 minutes left. I got 3 minutes left. And then came Samson to Gaza and saw their harlot, and he went unto her. And we know the story. This is a story that we know well. If you've ever been in church, we know the story well. Samson and Delilah, right? The beautiful young, again, not a Jew. She was another foreigner. But he gets his eyes fixed on her, and and it says that she was a harlot. A harlot. She was a person of a very low reputation. But he saw her, and she was apparently beautiful, and he got enticed with her, and we know how time and again he went down. And again, she was just being true to her character. They said, if you will figure out what the source of his strength is, and so that we will pay you a huge sum of money. Huge sum. So she was just being true to her nature. And we know what happens, right? He tells her once, if you do this, that didn't work. Twice, 3 times. Finally, he tells her, if you cut my hair off, I'll be like every other man. So he lulls him to sleep, cuts his hair off. They come down, and sure enough, and one of the saddest verses in the Bible is in verse 18, I think it is. 28 is all the way down to 28. But it says, yeah, it's in verse 20. She said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he woke out of his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times before and shake myself. And he wist not, he understood not, he knew not that the Lord had departed from him. He did not know that the Spirit of God had left him, because it had been a slow, steady slide until finally God said, I'm done for now. I'm done for now. If we had time to read on, we would read how God ended up using Samson to kill and to deliver the people from the Philistines. But he has to go through a lot of agony to get there, because the Spirit, he knew not that the Spirit of God had gone from him. Boy, we got to be careful, guys. We can't get into that place where one day we wake up and we say, I was with God, I was part, but where's he at? I didn't even know he was leaving. Didn't even know I'd left him. It's a